In this video, we'll talk about triads in minor keys and a couple of seventh chords as well, how to use Roman numerals and figured bass in relation to these chords, and how to do a simple and quick harmonic analysis. Like what we saw with major scales, with major keys, if you get the scale degrees of a minor scale, say in this case A minor, the minor scale that does not have any accidentals, and you superimpose 2/3 on top of each of those scale degrees, and all of those notes will be abiding by that scale's composition and in terms of accidentals, right? By that scale's key signature, you're going to get this. You're going to get a series of triads, just like what we have with minor keys. However, as we have talked previously, in the course of music, when we're dealing with a piece of music or a song that is in a minor key, the pull of the subtonic back to tonic is relatively weak. That pull is very strong in major scales naturally, and is a pull that, or kind of a force really, that is favored or prized in tonal music. Tonal music being a music that focuses on standard relationships between tonic and the other scale degrees, right? Where each scale degree has a particular function in relation to the tonic. It is the sort of theory that has really informed music composition in Western classical music for centuries, and to a certain degree popular Western music and music from all around the world, as a matter of fact. So we have this problem, right? We have that subtonic with a weak pull towards tonic. Look at the third here of our dominant triad. That is scale degree 7. That is a subtonic. That, in this case, that is G. Also a weak pull, right, between that and the dominant chord back to 1. We've seen how important this relationship is between dominant and tonic in tonal music, how important it is that we create an opposition and a very strong tension here that yearns back to resolve itself when it moves back to the tonic chord. Well, previously we had talked about how in minor keys we're going to use the raised 7th scale degree, the sharp 7, in sometimes, right, in the course of music. We talked about, for example, Greensleeves and how it used in that particular song, and now we can see exactly where and how and why that raised 7th scale degree is invoked. It is to serve the purpose here of heightening up the tension, creating that leading tone that drives us back towards tonic in these two particular instances, in the dominant chords, triad and 7th chord, and in the leading tone chords, the triad and the 7th chord built on the leading tone, right? So right now then, with raised 7th scale degree, in this case with G sharp, we have actually a dominant and a dominant 7th that have a very strong gravitational pull back towards tonic, so it fulfills the role that it occupies in tonal music. And we also have that role partially occupied by the leading tone here, right? With those notes that are taking us back or driving us back to the tonic triad. This is not to say that a minor dominant or the subtonic triad will not happen in music, right? To the contrary, they do happen, but the thing is that they fulfill other purposes. For example, notice here how in this case in A minor, the subtonic triad is G major. Notice the median triad, C major, right? If this were 1, this would be 5, the dominant. That is to say, the subtonic triad is used in minor keys, and even a dominant 7th chord built on the subtonic triad. These are used mostly for the purpose of transitioning, of modulating to a different key, the relative major key, in this case C major, because it is the dominant of the median, right, of the relative major key. So it does happen, they do happen, but they have a different function as the traditional function of the major dominant, of the dominant seventh, of those leading tone triads as well. So instead of this, what you'll mostly find is this, right? Tonic being a minor triad, supertonic diminished, mediant major, subdominant minor, and then you have the major dominant or dominant seventh, and then you have the major submediant, diminished leading tone, or fully diminished leading tone. A diminished triad plus a diminished seventh. So these are what you'll most often encounter actually. These are the qualities, right? With some variation like we talked about in relation to the dominant and the leading tone. Well, when it's not a leading tone, when it's a subtonic triad. But they fulfill other purposes. Other than that, this should be pretty standard. These qualities for these scale degrees. Roman numerals are used in a very similar way, or almost exact way, as we had been using them in major keys. First, you indicate what key you're dealing with the letter. If it is uppercase, then it's a major key. If it's a lowercase letter, it's a minor key. Here, we're showing that it's G minor, a fact that is further confirmed by the key signature. Here we have two flats, right? So it's either B flat major or G minor. This clarifies things. G minor it is. Uppercase Roman numerals, major triads. Lowercase Roman numerals, minor triads, of which we have really only two on the tonic and the subdominant. Lowercase with a superscript O, diminished triads. If it is a leading tone diminished seventh, you're also going to use superscript 7 next to that superscript O, like that. That already implies fully diminished, right? Diminished triad plus a diminished seventh. And uppercase with a superscript 7, that is a dominant seventh chord, a major triad with a minor seventh. Here are some examples of how we use the Roman numerals in conjunction with figured bass numbers. Now we have switched to a different key. Look at the key signature, 1 sharp, that is either G major or E minor. I clarify things here with a lowercase e colon here at the beginning of each excerpt. Here we have E, G, B, E to G minor third, G to B major third. This is a minor triad, an E minor triad, right? So in E minor, an E minor triad is scale degree 1. If G is at the bottom, the third, first inversion. It's a 1/6 or a tonic 6. If then B is at the bottom, that's the fifth, it's a 1/6/4 or a tonic 6/4. Okay? Likewise, here we have some C major triads. Notice that we have C, E, and G in all of these three instances, but at each point, a different note is at the bottom. Here the root, here the third, here the fifth. So in E minor, C is scale degree 6. It's a major triad, so we're going to write that with an uppercase Roman numeral 6. And here we're going to put a 6 with a superscript Arabic 6 to indicate that this is in first inversion, and this being in second inversion, submedian 6/4. Here we have dominant seventh chords in E minor, right? Root position, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion. Notice also how I have an accidental here. I'm indicating it in each of these four instances that does not belong to the key signature. That is the raised seventh scale degree. That is turning the subtonic into a leading tone, turning what would have been a minor dominant chord into a major dominant, right? And in this case, with an added seventh. So dominant seventh chords here. The dominant seventh chords and leading tone chords will always use an accidental that does not belong to the key signature. that is the sharp 7 of whatever key you're looking at. Here we have D sharp, right? In E natural minor, this would have been a D, the subtonic D, but since we are dealing with a dominant 7th chord, we need to raise that by a semitone. We need to use a leading tone. So now we have D sharp. All right, so 5-7, 5-6-5, 5-4-3, and the dominant 4-2, or dominant 2. So if you encounter a real-life example, whatever it is you're looking at, it presents chords, and it's in a minor key, and you want to figure out what the chords are, what the progression of these chords make with Roman numerals, right? You're going to follow the same steps as before. Tally up all notes for each chord, each individual chord. You're going to cross out the doublings if you should end up with only 3 or 4 note names, right? Depending on if it is a triad or a 7th chord. Then you're going to arrange these note names as superimposed thirds, 1 1/3 away from each other. You should be able to do those things if they are in fact triads or 7th chords. This will give you the root of each chord, and you'll also find out the qualities of each chord by analyzing the qualities of the thirds. You're going to consider the roots in relation to the key's tonic, right? So you're going to find out what the key is and count and see what the root, what scale degree the root is in that particular key. And lastly, you're going to add figured bass numbers according to the chord's lowest note, the bass. If it is inverted, you need to account for that with figured bass. So here's a short example, another chorale by Bach. These are excellent and have been used for, I'd say, a very long time, at least maybe 2 centuries, maybe more, 3 centuries, I don't know, in teaching generations upon generations of students on these ideas: chord progression, voice leading, triads, etc. Here's how it sounds. Right? I mean, at least just a little bit of it. It goes on for a little bit longer than that. So let's do this. First, we have the key indicated to us here, D minor. We can see by the key signature that this is either an F major or a D minor. I've clarified it here that it is D minor. Now, we count the notes for each chord. Here we have a harmonic rhythm of 1 chord change per quarter note, that is per beat, right? That's another reason why these chorales are kind of convenient, because the harmonic rhythm usually is pretty stable and you can see it very clearly. So here we have D, D, F, and A. Well, we have 2 Ds. We can cross one out in our minds, or if we're writing on a piece of paper or whatever it is, we're left with D, F, A. We try to arrange those as stacks of thirds. Wouldn't you know it? D, F, A already appear or are already configured in that particular position as stacks of thirds. So this is a D chord, right? We analyze the quality of the chord by calculating the quality of the thirds. D to F, minor third. F to A, major third. Minor third plus major third, this is a minor triad. Or in other words, this is a D minor triad. So the root is D, the key is D. So this is a tonic chord. Since it's a minor chord, we're going to put a lowercase Roman numeral 1 underneath. Lastly, we just need to assess if this chord is in root position or not, if it is inverted. The lowest note that appears here is a D. This is a D minor chord. The lowest note is D. The bass is the root. Therefore, no figured bass necessary. Let's look at the next one. Here we have C sharp, A, E, A. We have 2 A's. We only need to consider C sharp, A, and E. As they appear, C sharp, A, and E, we can already hear and see that this is not arranged as a stack of 2 superimposed thirds. right? So we need to change that. We need to put him in a way that we have those three notes a third away from each other. If we bring this A down an octave, right? And, excuse me, this E down an octave and this A down an octave, for example, then we have A, C sharp, and E. So here we can clearly see that that's how those three notes are configured as two superimposed thirds. A to C sharp, major third. C sharp to E, minor third. So this is a major triad, the root being A. So this is an A major triad. A is scale degree 5 in D minor, D, E, F, G, A. Because it's a major triad, we put a uppercase Roman numeral 5, which is what I did here, right? And lastly, we need to figure out if we need any figured bass. The lowest note is C sharp. C sharp is not the root of this triad. This is an A major triad. Therefore, this triad must be inverted. If it had been in root position, you would see an A at the lowest, as the lowest note here. That's not what you see. C sharp is the third of this triad. We have A, C sharp, E, right? C sharp is the middle note. It's the third. When the lowest note of a triad is its third, the bass is the third, then that triad is in first inversion. And you indicate that with a superscript 6, just like what you see here. You do this same thinking for the rest of them, for each chord individually, right? Never minding here the circled notes, which are passing tones. They are non-chord tones. They do not belong to this chord. Rather, they're taking us to a different chord, right? They're there for quote-unquote embellishment. And this is what you have. You have tonic, dominant in first inversion, tonic, then you have a leading tone. Look here at this C sharp, right? But it's in first inversion. That's not the bottom note, right? E, the third of that chord, is the lowest note. We go to tonic in first inversion. Notice how this has the same notes as these two tonic chords, right? D, F, and A. D doubled here, but F is the lowest note. So tonic in first inversion. We go to a tonic chord in second inversion, to a dominant chord. Once again, you can see the raised 7th scale degree, that leading tone, that C sharp, and then it resolves down to tonic. I've put something in parentheses here that I think is really important because this is usually how this is notated in theory. This is a topic for a later discussion, but I thought I'd just put it in there to clarify. This formula is so common. Tonic in second inversion, going to dominant or dominant 7th, going to tonic in first inversion, that this chord, the tonic in second inversion, has been seen as a dissonant dominant chord, right? So sometimes what you're going to see instead of writing it as a tonic in second inversion is that it's a dominant in second inversion, resolving to a dominant 5-3 being root position, right? Resolving to 1. Once again, topic for a later discussion, and we'll get to that at a later video. This is probably how you would have seen it, but this is actually technically correct as well. This is a tonic in second inversion. Let's just listen to it one last time. Okay, thanks for watching. Next, we're going to be talking actually about harmony. Bye.